Hello everyone. In this video, we will be demonstrating a tool that can be used by fleet managers for vehicle replacement. First, I'm going to talk about the methodology used to derive the vehicle replacement standard, and then we will move on to the process of using the tool. In this methodology, we will be using four criteria to examine each vehicle in the fleet and raise a flag if a vehicle meets the criteria. The first criteria is age of vehicle greater than maximum expected life. The second criteria is age of vehicle greater than maximum utility life. This is different from maximum expected life. For example, a vehicle might have a maximum life of 8 years as specified by the manufacturer, but from the fleet manager's experience, it could be run for 10 or 12 years depending on the type of the vehicle. The third criteria is total cost without fuel is greater than acquisition cost of the vehicle. And the fourth and final criteria is odometer reading is greater than threshold mileage of the vehicle. Based on the four criteria, we would examine all the vehicles in the fleet and identify how many of these vehicles meet 4, 3, 2 and 1 criteria. Now we will run through the tool and see how to interpret the different results the tool generates. The tool comprises two sheets, master sheet and class data that serve as inputs to the tool. Master sheet has information corresponding to all the vehicles in the fleet, such as department name. Essentially, department is basically the subcategories within a fleet management division. The second column is equipment ID. This is the unique ID for each of these vehicles. The third criteria or the column is class ID, and we have other information such as manufacturer name, model, class type, vehicle type, agent, etc. etc. The detailed instructions on how to load data into the master sheet is provided in the instructions section in the sheet. Any fleet manager who is new to using this particular tool can look into the instructions and load appropriate data to run the tool. The second sheet, which has input information, is the class data sheet. Class data sheet comprises information about class ID of all the vehicles. For example, vehicles that have class IDs 1200, 1300 and 1400 fall under the administrative cars category. The class data sheet has been developed keeping the broader use case of the tool in mind. Fleet managers with different class codes can modify the class data sheet accordingly and still use the tool for their vehicle replacement purposes. Class data file comprises important information corresponding to all the criteria we will evaluate our fleet against. Now let's run through the simulation and analyze different output files. Once we click the run simulation button, we'll see three different output files generated. The first sheet is vehicles old sheet. This particular sheet has information corresponding to all the vehicles that meet at least one criteria, and the information has been sorted in the descending order of total criteria met. So in other words, the top rows correspond to all the vehicles that meet four criteria, and when we go down, we'll see vehicles that meet three criteria, two and then one criteria. This information can be used by fleet managers to see which vehicles have to be replaced. The second sheet we are going to talk about is the department vehicle type overview. So what we essentially see here is the columns correspond to various departments within the fleet management division, and the columns here correspond to type of vehicles for those corresponding departments. So how do we read this particular table? For example, if we look at column B6, it says 1. That means there is one vehicle in the auditor department and that falls under administrative category that meets at least one of the criteria. And if we have to replace this particular vehicle, we'll have to allocate a budget of $19,885 for this. So we have a slicer to the right of this screen where you can select the total criteria met. For example, if I click on 4, it provides me information on how many vehicles in total meet 4 criteria and what is the total budget required. This particular cell in L12 says that 35 vehicles meet 4 criteria and we need at least 1.117 million to replace these vehicles. Also, since this particular sheet provides breakup of different vehicles required by different departments, we can fleet managers can use this information to form a budget analysis for the vehicle replacement. The third sheet I'll be talking about is age miles sheet information. In this particular sheet, the reason for this particular sheet is if there are budget constraints when fleet managers discuss with finance department, they could prioritize certain vehicles for replacement compared to other vehicles in the fleet. Essentially, what the columns here talk about is greater than 5 years AEL implies that these vehicles in this particular column have been used more than 5 years beyond their expected life. Similarly, the rows talk about vehicles for let's consider row A7 greater than 50,000 AEM. What this indicates is at least 15 vehicles have been used beyond 50,000 miles above their expected mileage. So what essentially this sheet tells us is the intersection of this the columns and rows provide certain some critical information. Let's consider B7. Uh, the number 3 indicates that there are 3 vehicles in the fleet that have been used for more than 5 years above the expected life and they have been driven for more than 50,000 miles above the expected mileage. So fleet managers can prioritize vehicles in when they have budget constraints during fleet replacement. So the top left corner of the section are the vehicles that have to be replaced in the upcoming years. The center section of the vehicles of the table talks about vehicles that are in the danger zone, and the bottommost section of the table provides information on which vehicles are safe for the next 2 to 3 years. The fleet managers can use this information to prioritize the vehicles and also work around their budgets so that they can replace their fleet effectively. We also have a clear button in the first sheet, the master sheet, where people who wants to run a new simulation can use the clear data file to clear all the existing information and upload new input information. Thank you.